And we are live with a super special guest. The great and powerful IceRock is on with us. Richard Icefeller, how you doing, man?
Good. How you doing?
I'm really good. Wow, we've been talking a couple of weeks now, but it feels like forever because the
Yeah.
amount of information.
Well, when you asked me to join your podcast here, I didn't know if I should do it or not. I've been asked to do other ones, and by talking to you, I lean more towards you because I felt more open on
Yeah,
my
for
tools.
sure.
That's what I do, and so I tried getting you to know me and see the stuff that I was doing. So
Mhm.
you're kind of with me instead of like sitting there kind of in shock because I have so much to show. You know.
So I've been the best way to describe you to people is the Alex Jones of the drywall community. That's what I've been saying, because it's just like you'll go, "Hey, do you know this specific thing?" And I'll go, "No, I know nothing about that." And you'll be like, "Well, in the 70s," and you'll start right from the beginning and run it all the way to the end. It's like every time my phone rings and it's you, it's like someone's handing me like a some sort of a drug that I know is going to fry my brain for 2 hours. But I fucking take it every time. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because it's wild. Good. So you're doing good. It's Friday night.
It's Friday. Yep. Hopefully we can keep it under like 3 hours. I don't know. I'm gonna try to do my best.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
it was nice. It was nice to meet you, by the way. So when you first
Thank you.
messaged me, it's like you're really good to talk to. So I feel comfortable with you. So I'll tell you about myself and like where I started. So I grew up in New England. I'm from
Okay.
Illinois, but I grew up in New England, and so out there, the drywall is different. Everything's different no matter where you go in different locations. I've learned that with my trips that I do, like when I go on my tool trips and stuff. But I started off when I was just a kid as basically a busboy, and
Okay.
work your way up the ladder until I was a head chef by the time I was in high school. And I got tired of cooking, but I did cooking to get out of the house,
Yes.
just and make money, get out of the house. And so the last year, in like I think it was 1988 when I graduated from high school as a head chef. Um, 2 years after that, the restaurant went under, and they wanted me to basically wait for a summer, no, wait a winter and come back.
Mm.
And I was like, I don't want to do that. So I don't. I looked up catering and all kinds of stuff, and it's like I'm gonna look up this drywall company. So this drywall company was Atlantic Drywall on the East Coast, and they work on $1 million homes on the East Coast. And so I called them up, and the guy's like, "Hey, have you ever painted before?" I was like, "Nope, I've done nothing. And I want to do something totally different."
Yeah.
And I worked my way up the ladder there. I was always improving stuff, like so that my job was basically this cleanup person. You scrape the floors, wash the walls down. They wash the walls because everything's sprayed, and
Okay.
and I still do that to this day. And I'll go over that later. But so like I learned the cleanup part, the scraping. And so when I started doing drywall, I was like, I don't like picking up messes. I don't want to scrape. So
That's right.
I try to
Yeah.
stay clean. So those things, when people start off as a finisher, it's good to start down low. It's good to start down at the bottom, basically. Not just like, hey, I'm a drywall finisher. I can run a
Mhm.
bazooka. Someone gives you a bazooka and you're off to work, right? That's not
Yeah.
how it should be. You should start off low. So I learned. I went up the ladder, and it was fun because I got to do what I wanted to do, right? Um, and I got to watch other drywallers. And so like one group was a banjo people. This other guy was like a pull tape. He had a homemade thing his
Oh
dad
yeah.
made, pull tape out. But he didn't sand his work. I had to sand his work, right?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then there's other guys with the bazookas and auto tools and stuff, right? So there's different groups of people. And so I was a painter that came behind him, so I got to see little things here and there.
Okay.
And so I learned a little bit, and I worked with the hangers a little bit, and the different groups of people. And the one guy that I learned from the most was the guy that pulled the tape out of a box.
Okay.
And so it's a lot different than the way that the one that Better Than Ever made that you pull out of a bucket. I think Columbia has one now, the
Yep.
taper.
Yeah, where it
And
just it hugs the side. Yeah.
yeah, and they pull it out and they put it in a bucket. So how I was taught was you pull it and you weave back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You have a
Yeah. Yes.
big wad of tape, and you go around and you're slapping it on the walls, and you have mud all over your arm,
Oh yeah.
down your leg, but it's not on the floor. It's not messy. It's just messy on you. And what
Yeah.
happens is doing it that way, your hands will dry up.
Yeah.
Right. And they'll dry up and it hurts. You get cracks on your fingers and stuff.
Oh,
right?
totally. Yeah.
So, but that's how I learned. And then the hot mud, learning the hot mud and stuff like that, because we needed hot mud back then because the old corner bead had a big nose on it. Right.
Okay.
So the
Yeah.
nose is like, what's this there?
Oh, I love all I love all that stuff you got behind you.
This
Yep.
is a rigid corner. It's got a nice nose on it, right?
Yeah.
So, but the old corner bead was really, really big, and you had to put a lot of hot mud in there because just regular mud would take forever to dry. So the newer corner bead is a huge difference in what I started off with, right? So anyway, I was there in Atlantic. I was in New Hampshire working for Atlantic Drywall, and my grandparents live in Illinois. And so I decided I want to spend time with my grandparents. I left the company and I was working up the top of the ladder. And that's a whole other story. I think I told you about it, but getting up and towards a certain point where I was at the top. And so I wanted to leave. I come up here and I brought all my tools with me, my stilts. I had a hawk and trowel. That's how I did everything back then.
Yeah.
My homemade box that I made. Had everything I needed to start off. And I couldn't find any work. So I got a hold of this automotive place.
Okay.
It was called what was it called? Atwood. It's called Atwood. All right. So they have a bunch of places, and there's companies all the way up into Canada too. So what we did was seat tracks. Seat tracks, you get in your vehicle, your seat goes back and forth, up and down. Right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So we made those. The factory is right down the street from me. It's closed now, but I started working there, and I went in there with my drywall stuff. Like I had a jumpsuit cut down. I'm this like, who's this guy? I come in.
Yeah.
I got my jumpsuit on. Next thing you know, I'm black. I'm wearing my Boston Bruins jersey because I'm from New England.
Yep.
Going in that plant, and so I moved up the ladder, making my job easier because you had to make a rate, and so that process of working at that automotive place taught me this drywall stuff.
Efficiency.
I learned, and this is the way things work. And so I worked on a welder and presses and riveters. And so I worked up the ladder. Another company came in and bought it. It was called Excel. Excel bought it, and they wanted me to become a supervisor. And I was like, I don't want to be a supervisor,
No.
And I was like, well, you guys, you do so good. I was like, I make stuff, I make my job easier.
Yeah.
And then another company bought it, and it was called Dura Automotive. They offered me a position for continuous improvement, and it was like a process technician. And so I did that. They sent me to Canada and Bracebridge for
that's Sigma, right down the road from me. Yeah.
Six Sigma training. And so I became a green belt Six Sigma engineer. And so my first year, I saved the company like $600,000. I was
gonna say, and that explains a lot.
Did all kinds of stuff, and it was so fun. So one of the things I made, I'll show you. I even have that here. So this is a recliner.
Okay.
This goes in the seat. So you have a 60-40 split in a truck or in the second row. And so 60 is bigger and 40 is a small one. And so my job was to take the line that makes this, which is like different pallets going through and getting riveted and spun around, and bring it from one factory to our factory. And from right away, I eliminated like 4 people. I did time studies. Like I could get rid of you, rotate this, do this, do this. Yep. So there's a huge savings from the beginning. But when you have a stacked component with all these pieces inside there, if it's missing something, you'll feel like there's a white dot inside here. There's a green label over here. And someone's checking all this stuff, right? So what I did was I made a machine. I drew up a machine in AutoCAD and designed the machine. And so this is what I did. I do this. This was the same stuff as drywall stuff. I designed this piece here. So it shows like how everything works and functions.
Okay.
And I could take it apart. And we made this part was called the quad. And if it ever had a bad batch, I could test it, put it in there, see how the functions, and then check it all out, right? So this is a function. It's all cut apart, and then you can see how it works. So anyway, I went up the ladder there, and basically when you do continuous improvement, you work yourself out of a job.
Yeah.
And so what do? You start working with safety, you
Yeah.
know? Um,
Yeah, you literally work it until it's not fun anymore, and then you move
yeah,
on to the
what do
next
you
thing.
do? Next thing you know, I had boxes of stuff under my desk waiting to get the boot,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And then I came and I said, I'm just going to go back to drywall. So the meanwhile, while I was doing all this Dura stuff, all this automotive stuff, I was doing side jobs, and I
yeah,
was really busy doing side jobs. So I didn't stop. So I worked nonstop. And so every job I did was a little different. Like, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this, because I started getting the engineering stuff inside me.
right.
Let's try this. Let's try that. Let's make this tool. Let's make this tool. So when I got laid off, I said, I'm going to start making my own tools.
Totally.
I gotta make my job easier. And so I did, I think, the 2 jobs where I made this. I took this toolbox, a cheap plastic toolbox, I put it on a piece of plywood, screwed it down, cut 2 slots in the bottom, put a tape reel on it, and put a knife on the end of it.
Yeah.
Broke the knife, pulled it through, cut it. I liked the box. I liked that box because it had a lid and I could seal it. You know,
Right. Okay.
and the one that the other guy made was wide open. Air can get to it.
Yeah,
And even
you're
that
gonna
new one
start.
that's out, there's a green look. There's a green one that you can do
Oh,
like tiny jobs.
yeah.
Have you
Okay.
seen that?
No.
They sell it. They sell it in stores. It's a good for DIYers.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
But there's no top, so the mud starts to dry. You want to contain that mud,
Yeah.
right? So I could leave for the day overnight, and I'm not going to worry about it drying up. I could put a damp sponge on both sides. But again, my hands are starting to dry up.
Yeah.
My wrists were starting to hurt holding the hawk. I think I was wearing like a what's it called? Ligament stress brace on my
Oh yeah. Yep.
on my wrist, holding all that mud on my hawk all the time. Because you load all that mud. And I don't care if you use a hawk or a pan, you're
Yeah.
still holding a lot of
Still
weight.
weight. Yeah.
Yeah. So I said, I got to change this. So that's when I bought my first compound tube. So
Right.
first compound tube, roughly 2007, 2008.
Whose was it?
The better than ever.
Okay.
And so I saw these tools, these videos were better than ever. It wasn't really that popular in this area. No one knew what, they don't even know what it is. You know,
Yeah.
to this day, people don't know some people don't know what a compound tube is. They think it's a bazooka, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I show it to people and they still have no idea. And it's everywhere now.
and so they had a system that was called the Red Diamond series, and they were
Right.
promoting that like crazy. But again, social media wasn't that big at that time when Better Than Ever was there. And so when I first started doing drywall in 2007, 2008, we had drywall talk. We had contractor talk, drywall talk. And I think the social media thing was like, I can't remember what it was called. It was some weird name. They had it. A lot of the kids used it.
You're like MySpace or something.
Yeah,
probably.
MySpace.
Yeah.
And I never had MySpace, but that's
So
what they all had.
That drywall talk would have been like a forum.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It's really nice. It's still out there. It's really nice, but you need a laptop to really run it. So when I got my phone, it was like, I don't like it anymore. Didn't really, the app they made for it doesn't really function.
Yeah, it gets kind of clunky. Yeah.
So when I got on, when Facebook came out, I was like, hey, I'm going to start my IceRock drywall page.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start making tools, and that's what I did. I just went crazy right away.
Yeah.
With tools, right. So I'm going to start off talking about the knives.
Yep.
Okay. So the knives are really important, and so the first knife that I made, because I used mesh tape at the time, mesh tape and Durabond with my compound tube, and so I made this knife here. So when the one-piece knives, you haven't seen this. So
No.
when the one-piece knives came out, they said it's one piece, and so I cut it, and I put a flashlight in here. So it was like a rework flashlight for doing touch-ups and stuff.
Yeah.
And this isn't one piece. I can see the old tang in there.
Yeah,
You lied to me, right? So I put a wheel in the back for rolling the corners.
Yeah.
And cutting the tape. So this was a knife that I used quite a bit for doing the mesh tape. This knife didn't sell. You know, it went to Marshalltown. Marshalltown was the first company I started working with, and so they would come to my job sites and watch me work and we do stuff. I worked with their sprayer, the mud sprayer, and a couple other things, but nothing to do with really knives and stuff. So not all the things I make, it got out and worked, right?
Mm-hmm.
So made that knife, and then so since I was running my compound tube up high, I needed to reach up high. So I made this knife here. I call this my EXP knife. And so this is actually a PVC pipe.
I see that.
With a paint roller end on it. So it looks like the inside of this knife. It's like a paint roller.
Yep.
So I made my own knives. And so I even had a little
I see that.
for a hand. But this is nice because I can pop it on with my Purdy adapter. This is a Jiffy lock. And so I bought a case of these. So
Okay.
they're on all my tools. I put on all my tools. A flusher, inside roller, outside roller. They all snapped onto my pole. And this is how all that system began with the Nicor thing, kind of. So
right.
I could snap this onto a pole. I could reach up high. I could wipe it, run a bead of mud and wipe it. And so everything was going really, really good. I was using mesh tape, and then Fiberfuse came out.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that whole process of running mesh tape and Durabond is a whole story itself.
Yeah.
And it works really well. I know another process that I can do without using hot mud now. People say mesh tape cracks. It doesn't crack. It's the mud you use.
Right.
It's material with material. If it cracked, they wouldn't make it. They wouldn't use it on plaster. They wouldn't use it in UK, all these countries. I mean, everything is cracking. No, it's because they use the right material. They know what needs to be done. Here in the States and in Canada, and they think mesh tape can be used with regular mud, and it can't. And so they say it's bad. And what I say to that is, they know how to use it. They just know how to use it.
You and I have talked about this quite a bit, where when somebody shows up and has something to say about a product, it's typically because they're using it incorrectly. And it's just because they don't have the fucking time on the product yet, right? Like you don't know what you're talking about because you've not invested the time. And that is probably the most frustrating part for somebody like you, because you have.
And it works. You just have to learn how. You have to go through that process and learn how to make it work for you.
Right.
So I still use mesh tape to this day on certain things. And so I feel like every job, it depends on what you do, but because I do big houses to small houses to whatever, I have to have different processes. I don't go from one house to next house, and everything's the same. It's everything's different. That's why I have so much.
Right.
Every job is different.
Yeah, if it was all the same, you'd have 4 tools that you just used the way that Yeah, it would be very simple, but anybody that's out there taping knows this is not a simple thing. I still walk into situations where I'm like, okay, how are we going to do this? Because I've never seen something like this before.
but all those little processes, all those little changes you do helps you with other things. Like, hey,
Totally.
that's really bad. What am I going to do to that? It's like, oh, I'll just do this. I know what to do with that, right? So then it's like, how am I going to speed my jobs up? Right? I got to speed my jobs up. So I met this guy. His name is Brandon Hunter, and he was from Allwall, and he was a salesman. Great guy. He was in contact with me and Brian Kitchen from
Drywall Nation.
Yeah, so we talked like the three. I never really talked to Brian too much, but we always talked about different things, and we're always talking because he was the one supplying the tools. He's the one that gave me the Fiberfuse when it first came out, and so my process just changed because with hot mud you need to stay clean. You need to always clean your tools, and that was the hard part. And that's where the finishing station basically came in, right? So I bought a box. He goes, "Hey, try this box." So he sent me a Columbia. This box right here. It's the Columbia Fat Boy, and it's beat up. I really used the heck out of this. It needs to be rebuilt, right?
So on the back of that, does it have a sticker that says something on the bottom?
No, this thing's
okay.
old.
So this was even before then.
This is really old. This is a nice box. I'm gonna have it rebuilt. But I used that a lot. It's like the first time I used it, I didn't know how to use it. Put it up on the ceiling, mud all over me. I'm like, what the heck?
Just rains. Right? Yeah. So the first time that I did that, I whipped up the mud. I had used the Predator. I had talked to Brad about what it should be like. He's like, it's got to be like soup, right? So I'm like, no problem. So I fill the box up and I I give it that pressure, and it just exploded. I was like, oh, okay, we'll try this again. Anyways, I thought that was fun.
Oh, so I was like, how am I going to learn how to do this? How am I going to learn how to
Yeah.
run this? Right. And so I figured the breakout, started using it. And so I made this knife. This was my next knife that I made. And I called this my,
Oh yeah.
this was my
Look at the
swipe.
handle on that.
Yeah. So it's, again, I put it on there. I wanted a good beefy handle on there.
Oh
It's
yeah.
lightweight. It's plastic in here. You can see the plastic. And so I could screw it onto my pole. And it had a Purdy adapter on it. I could pop it on and off. And what's good about the Purdy adapters, I can put it on a pole, hit the ceiling, pop it off, hit the walls. But it has an angle on it. And this angle is important to have.
Right.
You can't use a regular knife. So I made this knife here. Same kind of thing. It's got the Purdy adapter on it.
Yeah.
With the hand grip. This didn't work.
Yeah.
Straight knife. Like when I first started doing these knives, back in the day, you take a piece of PVC pipe, you put your handle in there, you put it on a pole, and like, hey, I got this nice tool, right? So it's not nothing new, but what's new is that you can pop it on and off.
Yeah.
For me, that was what I liked. And so this was garbage, but I kept it because I made it, right?
Yeah, I would never get rid of that stuff. Yeah.
But this one worked by changing the angle, it gives you the flex, right?
Yes.
And so this one really worked really well. It was 10 inches with my 10-inch box. It's like that's not going to keep working for me because I have to trace that same line, right?
Right.
So that's the thing with tracing behind your box. For me, and there's a lot of people that do it now. A lot more newer people are going to do it. And then as the older people that don't want to do it, they think you shouldn't have to do it. So for me, it's two different things. One thing is it's a training tool. This is a training tool for beginners to learn. If you're pulling off mud, then your setting is wrong. You're not dialed in correctly, right?
Okay.
So then you adjust it till you're not pulling mud off. So it's a training tool. After you get good at it, then you're using it because you're just getting it inside deep to the angles. You're not leaving nothing behind, so there's no sanding or scraping between coats. Or if you're in a finished house, you can't do that. A lot of jobs I go into, it's a finished house. I got to go in there and stay clean.
Right.
So it's not like a brand new house. So when I made this knife, it worked really well. I was like, people were asking me to make them, and I was making knives, and I was sending it out to people. Some people out there still have it. So I was like, how am I going to make this easier for myself? So those knives that are scraper knives for popcorn removal?
Yeah.
That little square thing on it. I bought one of those. And so that's what this is.
Right.
So I took that bracket, I just drilled the holes out of it, bought a knife at the store, and I got the angle that I want. I can screw it onto a pole. I can put a Purdy adapter on there, and now I have basically the first trail knife that you can buy. So all these tools that I work with Advance with are tools that I've made a long time ago. I was like, how can I make your tool, right? So basically, I took their handles that they make, right? I have different brackets for different angles I was looking for when I was testing it, and then put it on a blade, and that's the trail knife, which is this knife here.
Yeah, and it's like an offset. That's the beginning of the offset, looks like.
Yeah, so this was the first one I did. This goes back to 2009, and they're really pretty similar.
Yeah.
But what I did was I gave people an option to buy it.
Okay.
Here you go. Here's my tool. It's not a secret anymore,
Yeah.
So I was like, I figured I'm not gonna be around forever.
That's one of the biggest things about you that I respect is that you're from that generation of feast or famine. You know what I mean? Where guys would just hold things tight to their chest and they'd die with them. You know what I mean? Same with Royce and the three-way. That was his whole opinion about it. Was he wasn't going to share it with everybody. They're going to steal it, and I think then you start to realize, like, why wouldn't I leave this behind? It's a huge invention, you know, like same with a lot of your stuff, and you're open about it. It's more about kind of helping the community and figuring it out. I think with you, a lot more of it is just figuring it out and making it more efficient. And then you do, and you're like, ah, let's share it with everybody.
Right. Because you don't have to, but you figure like, who's gonna
Yeah.
know who you are? You know, you're on this planet for a reason, right? So
Hmm.
might as well make use of it. So those are the knives basically, and I still use them to this date, but they're different. They're advanced knives now. You know, I gave all my knives, and this is what we're gonna do. And so those are the knives. The next knives would be basically like the smoothing blade knives. The
Yeah.
first smoothing blade knife I got was in 2000. It's a Burrow Expert. I've used this thing like crazy.
Okay, so I wanted to talk to you about. Oh my God, look at the bow in it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's it's been around. And when I first got this, I'd say it was 2011 or so.
Okay,
2011,
but
2000.
this wasn't level 5 yet, right? Whose was it at this point?
This is Burrow Expert.
Burrow
So
Expert.
so
Okay.
these knives are made. These knives are made in Germany for plastering,
Right.
not drywall.
Yeah.
And so he was trying to get in the States, and the only way he could get in the States was to bring it to Tape Tech. So Tape Tech has the yellow ones. It's exactly the same thing. Now
They
there's
just,
yellow, green, purple, whatever,
yeah,
right? There's
different
so many
color.
of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? And so when I first got this knife and I did my videos, people were like giving me all kinds of crap. And there's people that gave me crap that probably have the whole set of Columbia ones by now. You know what I mean?
They do now. Yeah.
Yeah. They're like, whatever. And that's a whole conversation by itself. But these were the original ones. Level 5 came out, and he's like, "Hey," because I was working with this guy. I know
Right.
this guy, the owner of this guy, and so he's like, I think about making those knives." And it's like, "Well, I can't really help you,"
Yeah.
but he knew where I was at. And he kept sending them to me, right?
Yeah.
So the level 5 knife. Look at this smoothing blade,
Ah, this little guy.
right? So this is like a prototype of the handles. This is the first level 5 knife. They had plastic black ends on them. Anybody that's
Oh,
got black ends was one of the testers before they went to the
okay.
changes. Like I talked to you earlier, it's like people, I'm testing this out. It's like you're not testing it out.
No, you're not. Yeah.
You don't have the ones that were made before they changed it. So yeah, so it basically shows how it works. A thin blade,
Yep.
the upper pressure, right?
Looks a lot like a tomahawk.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and they all function the same. Really, they all function the same. Are the blades removable or not removable? Blah blah blah.
For
They
sure.
all function the same. So then level 5 made this one with the end caps.
Yep.
I never liked the bracket for it.
Yeah.
I got a grips on mine.
Yeah. Okay. That's something else we're going to talk about. That's epoxy, right?
No, this is
Oh,
not.
okay. Okay.
This
Okay.
is something that would be on the mud pan.
Okay. Yeah. And it gives you that grip.
Yeah. Says I work for them, so I just put it on there, right? But I don't use this knife anymore. Now I don't use it because it doesn't work. I don't use it because there's so many out there, and I got so much crap for the years with this knife.
Totally.
I just said I'm done with it. And so like right after they made these knives, Burrow Experts still made their knives. So this was Burrow grip, called the Burrow grip. Have you
Oh,
seen this?
cool. No.
So these are actually the best ones, and I feel
So
like
for anybody listening, this is a smoothing blade that's got a circular, almost like a pool noodle handle on it. It looks awesome. Anybody that's listening to this on Spotify, I would tell you to come and watch the video of it later on, because he's got everything here that he's showing us. Sorry, go ahead.
there's a lot more. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, this is gonna be a good night.
So this was designed for a bracket that slides on, and you see that it's got the little notches on it, so it
Totally.
rotates on it, right? But I'm going to talk about this in a second. But so this is what came out next. And
Yeah.
it has different end caps. There's red ones and there's white ones, and those are the blade thickness. This one's really thin. So I
Okay.
got little blade thicknesses on this blade. And I want to go over this in a second with this one. I'm going to put this one aside. So the next, I'm gonna go back to that.
Okay.
And then they made this knife here. This has got a rubber blade. It's a rubber blade,
Oh, cool.
right?
That's
So
almost like a squeegee.
Yeah, I had this one made custom for me. It's just like a 7 inch. Because when I do like repair work, if you want rubber, it doesn't leave ridges
Right.
when you go, so you need a rubber knife. So that's what I use this one for doing repair work. It's got my old Trimtex card on there.
I love
So
it.
my Trimtex card had like all the pieces that I liked. So it
Mhm.
said like, here's samples. Here's all your samples. It's like, here's my business card. Pick the one you want. Well, now they don't make them anymore, so my card's garbage.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but talk about knives really quick. And so, if I had a regular knife like this one here, if I'm using this knife
Yeah,
and I'm
just a
pulling out
flat
a
knife.
pan
Yeah,
or a hop, all the pressure is on my wrist. It's
totally.
all on your wrist. And then you got these drywallers saying, "Oh, you do a drywall, you're gonna have bad wrists and stuff." If that's how you do it, then probably you're gonna have a bad wrist, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
the
don't fix
difference,
it or change it. Just deal with it, right? Like,
keep using the same one, right?
yeah,
In my groups, I always talk about use your left hand, use your right hand, use both. Get used
yeah,
to it. I can't. It's like get used to it. You
yeah.
never
I
know
do.
if you cut your finger or whatever, you want to keep working. So they do it in the military. Train yourself,
Yeah.
right? So I don't have a trowel with me, but I learned on a hawk and trowel guy. And
Okay.
so the trowel, you're pushing the
Yes.
mud.
Yeah.
You're not going to have someone that does plaster work or even like the Frisco Harmony use a knife the whole time because they're doing the whole wall, and your wrist would be after you did one room, your wrist would be killing you,
This one. Yeah.
right?
Already I was starting to feel it because you're just pulling it, pulling and pulling. It's yeah, the pad of my hand too, right? Because
Yeah,
you're controlling it with your fingers, but all that pressure's on. Yeah, it's no good.
gotta
Yeah.
work on your hands. That's why girls love us drywallers because we're such strong hands. So if you go to like a knife like this, a
Yeah.
lot of this is better because now it's a little bit of both of a wrist and pushing with your ergonomics,
Yeah.
and you're not going to get as sore, right?
So
But again,
what would you call that? Because I would refer to that as a tomahawk just because. But
it's just
what
a
you would
smoothing
just
blade.
a skimming blade. Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
yeah. And so they're just it's hard to coat with these knives because it puts too much mud on.
Yes.
So I'll go with the problem with these later, but but they do have its purpose. It's like, hey, they have a purpose. So, but if I take this knife, then my problem is like they copied the wrong. All these companies copied the wrong knife. This
Totally.
knife came out here. This one here is set up perfect for pushing and a knife, where it's more like a trowel.
Right.
This one here is unbelievable,
With the
and people
circular
don't know.
handle.
They
Yeah.
don't know about it, and so it's one of the.
I've never seen that before.
I
That
have
looks
one.
so cool.
It's put away in my garage, and it's got a special cap on it that locks on. It's a removable blade. It's a really nice one. But this is the one I just grabbed. I have cases of smoothing blades in boxes, not even opened, and in my shed that I don't use. And they also make ones with plastic blades, plastic for doing, your stucco and stuff.
Okay.
But in the States, and I told Frank, I said, when they come to the States, people are going to use them behind the boxes on the
Yep.
butts. That's what they use it for. I use it for patches. So I'd come in with my compound tube, squirt some mud on the wall, wipe it with this knife, and that's all I had. Two tools, and it was in and out.
Yeah.
Right. So the smoothing blades, to me, if you're going behind your box with a smoothing blade, right? Because of the way this works, you got this bracket on the top. You have to angle your knife like this.
Yeah.
You can't be flat. So when you're pulling it, you're behind a box. You're actually pulling too much mud off.
Yeah, you're digging it out. Yeah.
Too much. No matter what smoothing blade you're using, you're just taking too much off. Now, if you're doing a final coat, skim coat, super super tight,
Yeah,
it's going
that's
to
what
be
they're
fine.
good for. Yeah, in my
Right.
opinion. Yeah.
Just for skimming. And then but you got these people rolling mud on, and then we're using a box put it on, or they're putting a trowel putting it on, or a knife putting it on, and they're just taking it off and putting it back in the bucket.
It's
like,
funny that you say that, because that's what I've started doing on things that I'm really going to skim out. Instead of fighting it onto the wall, I'll throw it into my 10 or my 12 open and just run it a bunch of times and then come and skim it all off. But yeah, that's the difference between what I'm doing and what you've kind of invented here, is that like with your offset knives, you are just putting it on the wall. You're not off and on and off and on and
right. So this is totally flat.
Exactly. Yeah.
So like I did a job the other day and I boxed the whole house and I didn't wipe one time the mud off because
No
it just
way.
stays
Yeah.
there. And so a little bit stays there. You'll have like a little pattern kind of collecting, but once in a while you might take that mud and get deep in the angle, and you might use it. So you never clean the mud off.
Yeah.
And if you are pulling mud off, then your setting is wrong. Then your dial, fix the dial, right? I think one time, I think Brad Hanna said, you got to dial your box in. I said, Brad, my box is dialed in more than any regular boxes. I have a special shim that's in my box. So I don't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I go 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, because I have a bracket that goes in.
You're kidding. Okay.
No,
All right.
no. So I have a special thing that goes inside there. So it's more dialed in than any box.
Yeah.
Tape is a tapeworm.
Yeah. Tapeworm.
Texas. So Texas. And theirs is a dial.
Oh, like a click, 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 click kind of a dial?
It's just a round dial and a thing. You can put it anywhere you want, you know.
Okay.
It's the best system out there. No one's copied that one yet. But that's really the best one. Because you can you can't tell someone you should be on 3 or you should be on 2.
Well, you don't know mud consistency, pressure. There's a million different things.
The theme itself,
Yeah.
So people are giving answers like, and it kind of that kind of stuff like that bugs me on Instagram and stuff. And it's like, hey, how much water do I put in? What's my dial set at? What's this? What's that? I was like, you can't give an answer for that. My mud's different than your mud.
Yeah.
I can buy
box to box is different.
Box to box, or even store to store.
Totally.
It might say USG or whatever you have, but it comes from different plants, and they're different.
Right.
So
okay.
some of the
That's a perfect time, I think, to take a break. We've only got a minute left here, and then we'll be back. I think that's what this is going to be, us listening, and then me kind of like pulling on the reins for half a second. We'll be right back.